Okay, so we're going to be talking about Sadiq Khan and the mayor of London, who has up for grooming gangs, an update on Charlie Kirk, on more reasons why he was probably targeted for termination, and much more.
Of children happening in London. Kids scandals. Startling, explosive claims made by John, a decorated former detective from the UK Metropolitan Police, who identified sex abuse victims of grooming gangs. He claims his efforts to safeguard these victims, they were totally blocked when he presented his findings to the local London councils that fall under the purview of London's Mayor Sadiq Khan. So in a way, he is blaming Sadiq Khan for protecting these grooming gangs from functioning in London.
And this is why that people have such a basically towards Islam in London, because they know what it's about. If you've read about the the Quran, and you've read these hadith, you know how Muslims treat women, how they view women, how they view children, and it's not good. Okay. Muhammad has had interactions with children and young girls and mistreated them. And this is why London is so against Islam. Okay. And it is not a game. This is a serious threat. And by Sadiq Khan, allegedly being a person that has looked the other way when it comes to these grooming gangs, is basically feeding into the stereotypes about people who are Muslim, how they are. This is what they're like, okay, according to the Islamic religion.
Matter gained more attention when Sadiq Khan did not provide a clear reply to London Assembly member Susan Hall when he was asked how many rape gangs exist in London. What's the reality of these grooming gangs in London? Is there a cover-up from the men? To discuss this further with me, she's a journalist and author from London. Lynn, thanks so much for joining me here. These were explosive claims made by John Wedger. Is there an attempt at a cover-up on grooming gangs in London by the mayor himself?
Hi, thanks for having me. I think that very many people in the UK generally, not just in London, believe that there have been attempts to cover up or sideline the grooming gangs issue over the past 10 or 15 years. It's been going on for a very long time, and very many children, mostly white working class girls across the country, have been victimised. There have been reports that have said 250,000 or more girls have been caught up by grooming gangs in about 50 cities across the country over the last 10 or 15 years. And many of the grooming gangs have been South Asian. In the UK, when the word Asian is used, it usually refers to South Asia, not to East Asia. And there have been investigations, principally by one particular reporter, Andrew Norfolk, at the Times newspaper, that uncovered the involvement of gangs of predominantly Pakistani and some Afghan men in a number of cities that victimised young girls in prostitution gangs, sex exploitation, getting them addicted to drugs. It's pretty horrific stuff. And I think that the details, the really deep details of the...
What I never could understand, though, is why does the left always want to romanticize Islam? Why does the left do that? What is with that? Or why do feminists stick up for Islam? Why? When they brutalize women, okay? And sometimes it's the white feminists I see that stick up for Islam. Could it be is because, they treat white women a little different in Islam? Could it be that? That's the thing right there.
details are and as concerning as they are about how children are being trafficked and put into prostitution along with drugs and then sold, all happening in London, there's a big question, of course, here: how have grooming gangs thrived in the UK for so long? Because time and again, Sadiq Khan, who's the mayor, has been asked in the London Assembly to comment on whether London has suffered the same type of systematic trafficking of girls as has occurred in other towns like Rochdale and Rotterdam. There is never a clear reply, is what reports suggest. Several times he's been asked. What is it hinting at?
I think it's hinting at a community denial, to be honest with you. There have been a number of reviews, and there's most recently in June with the release of a what's called an audit, which is a review of the situation by a very senior lawmaker here, which has pointed to the fact that there was a great reluctance to identify the ethnicity of people involved in grooming gangs. And I have experienced it myself. I went to a press conference in January at the Pakistani High Commission, which was organised essentially to deflect attention away from the involvement of Pakistani men or men of Pakistani origin in grooming gangs. So I think that there is a communal desire to deny an ethnic component. Now, it is a fact, it has been said here that 83% of the sexual abuse of minors in the UK is committed by white men. But it's a proportionality issue, and studies have shown that the proportionality of the involvement of Pakistani origin men is also proportionate to the numbers in the population. So there are between 1.7 and 2 million Pakistani people in the UK, and so those numbers add up on a demographic proportional basis. Now, the Pakistani community groups are afraid that they will be targeted on a basis of race if they are identified as being proportionally involved in the grooming of young girls.
Well, the thing is like, that will be because of the fact that Sadiq Khan is not doing his job as mayor to get rid of these grooming gangs in London. He's not doing his job. That's the issue right here. And you're seeing why people in London have a very high animosity towards Islam. It's not about being racist. It is the simple fact of the matter is what is in that Quran and the fact that Muslims are practicing it. Okay. And you have a mayor in London who is supposed to look out for the people of London who is not doing his job, and he needs to be removed and put in prison. And I'm starting to see why certain countries, they, don't allow Muslims into their country for good reason.
Also, there are some leaders, very respectable senior leaders of the community who work in the legal structure in the police who are very vocal about the fact that the Pakistani community in the UK is not facing up to the fact that Pakistani men are deeply involved in criminal grooming and sexual exploitation of young white girls.
I hear your point. Lynn, of course, you've given the Pakistani cut here, and while that remains, do you feel these gangs, John Wedger suggested they've been on for at least 20 years, any kind of administrative protection? And of course, the administration lies in Khan's hand.
I don't know about blaming Sadiq Khan and his administration for protecting Asian Pakistani grooming gangs, but I think there has been a deep concern at establishment level not to name the gangs as Pakistani so that they aren't seen as being racist. And so there is a disproportionality in saying that Pakistani men are involved in this extreme sexual exploitation of young white women and girls, and not wanting to be seen as racist. There has been an imbalance there, and I think maybe that is what endures with Sadiq Khan.
And this is the thing, this, this scheme, this type of thing that comes with being, with the Democrats, they try, oh, you're being racist if you point out what's going on with these grooming gangs. No, you're telling the facts. Okay. London has a grooming gang problem, as well as other Western countries in Europe that have taken in Muslims. Okay. And it has to be addressed. They cannot let the culture wars get in the middle of doing what's right for the people of London, the people of Sweden, and wherever else with this type of problem. All right, now we're going to be covering, what they're saying about Charlie Kirk was about to expose the child trafficking ring that was going on in Israel that had ties to Erica Kirk before he passed. Let's get into that.
Charlie Kirk was preparing to go public with evidence linking Israeli operatives to a child trafficking network stretching from Washington, D.C. to Tel Aviv. Then, just 2 days later, he was dead. According to a long-time Turning Point USA donor and one of Charlie's closest friends, who has bravely decided to share what he knows, this was no random tragedy. It was a public execution, a warning to anybody who might dare to follow in his footsteps. The source, now terrified for his own life, says Kirk's dramatic U-turn on Israel in the final months before his death brought direct threats from powerful Jewish donors who influenced a currency and innocence like a commodity by the same global machine that runs the West. Through these conversations, Charlie said he finally understood how power really works. The networks, the blackmail, the sickening vice that holds the system together. He called it the hidden architecture. Global institutions stacked with predators and puppets. Men who traded influence like currency and innocence like a commodity. Charlie became obsessed with waking people up, pulling back the curtain and showing them what was really happening. But he knew the risks. And when he started digging deeper, he realized the corruption wasn't just out there, it was also close to home. This is where his story takes its darkest turn.
So Charlie writes in this group chat, just lost another huge Jewish donor, $2 million a year because we won't cancel Tucker. I'm thinking of fighting Candace. Somebody writes, ugh. Charlie writes, play into all of the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause.
For days, the mainstream media attack dogs tore into the story, calling it fake, mocking the source, and gaslighting the public into silence. But then, Turning Point USA themselves confirmed the messages were real. They didn't have to. Charlie had already said the same things on record and in his own words. The knife.
Jewish donors, they have a lot of explaining to do, a lot of decoupling to do, because Jewish donors have been the number one funding mechanism of radical, open border, neoliberal, quasi-Marxist policies.
But my thing is this, how are you going to go against these people but support them at the same time? Okay, you see how powerful they are. You should have ran and found another way to get involved with other conservative other conservative people who know a little bit more than you to expose Israel for what they have, from the criminality that they're involved in. But to me, it doesn't seem like he's a hero, really. You knew what you were getting into. You got into the grift of appealing once again. You appealed to these white supremacists who live in this delusion that they're victims. You grifted on these people's evil desires, and you didn't think that, as you were climbing to the top, it would get better.
Cultural institutions and nonprofits. This is a beast created by secular Jews. And now it's coming for Jews, and they're like, what on earth happened? And it's not just the colleges. It's the nonprofits. It's the movies. It's Hollywood. It's all of it. It's like, time for you guys to wake up and say no more. Draw a line in the sand. I don't care if you hate me.
The fact is, Charlie wasn't just questioning policy. He was digging into the root of global corruption. He was tracing the money, the networks, and the names behind the world's darkest trade, child trafficking. Hundreds of thousands of victims taken from the poorest corners of the globe and from war zones where chaos provides perfect cover, including those where Israel plays a central role, Ukraine among them. He demanded answers from Netanyahu himself.
Charlie boy, Charlie, you done went crazy, boy. You lost your mind. You were practically asking the devil, you were asking the devil, demanding questions from the devil. The devil wasn't going to answer any of those questions. He was going to have you removed. That's why they got Charlie replaced. That's what happened. Okay. Yeah, he didn't care if anybody hated him, but you were trying to challenge them. And you know that these people, they run almost everything in modern society. Almost everything in modern society. The entertainment industry, the sports industry, acting, military, finances, banking. Okay? I don't think he knew what he was into. Okay.
And that's when everything changed. Sources say the Israeli leadership began viewing Charlie as a liability, even a threat to Israel's future.
Yeah. I mean, you were taking money from them, and then you trying to get up in their face and try to demand answers from them. Charlie was not a bright person. I don't care what nobody says. This man was no freedom fighter. Freedom fighter have some brains. Okay? You don't. And then he was, trying to challenge Ben Shapiro. Remember that? Well, all the Jews, there's no secret that the Jews, they own a lot of things, Ben. They own the media. And Ben Shapiro looking at you like, what is this goyim doing? Who do you think you are? We don't pay you for this. What are you doing? Then he wanted to bring on anti-Zionist voices at a speaking engagement. I don't think this guy was no freedom fighter. He wasn't that smart. I don't care what he was. No, he went about this all wrong.
Within Israeli political circles, Kirk was seen as a rising star, a man destined for the presidency. But a future Republican president who wasn't fully aligned with Israel? who asked questions instead of obeying orders, who understood Israel's role in the international child trafficking network supplying DC and Hollywood, not to mention numerous European capitals with young blood. That was something they could never allow.
One more thing rather explosively. 3 people told me off record. 2 people who have this in a written communication from Charlie. One who is a Turning Point USA donor, and I would say very much one of the white knights in this. The very day before Charlie Kirk died, he expressed that he thought he was going to be killed. He told these people, I think they're going to kill me. Okay? He did not express that to me. So I'm telling you this based off the testimony of 3 people. And I'm saying because I hope that these people who I think are good will be inspired to come forward with that.
According to whistleblower.
You think they're going to unalive you and you still want to do a speaking engagement? Why didn't you run? I'm just saying, man. It's just, I just think he just jumped into this, man. I just think he really just jumped headfirst into this mess. He didn't plan things out. He didn't have a plan. What's the plan? How am I going to do this? How am I going to get out if things get too hectic? What's my exit plan? Where am I going to hide out? Okay? Because obviously he's way over his head. Charlie is way over his head. That's how I'm seeing this.
Whereas deep inside Turning Point USA, there are more than 3 people who know the truth and hold the evidence Charlie uncovered. In his final weeks, he was preparing to launch a full internal audit after discovering financial irregularities. He'd already begun breaking away from the pro-Israel narrative he'd once pushed, knowing that move alone could get him killed. But what truly sealed his fate was what he found next: Israel's hidden role in global trafficking, and the unthinkable connection to his own wife. Now, we're going to hear from a Turning Point USA donor who says the evidence shattered Charlie, left him reeling in disbelief, yet more determined than ever to uncover the truth no matter the cost. But first, an important word from our sponsor. Trafficking allegations, thanking him for everything he'd done for her so-called child adoption agency.
In 2012, Erica Kirk, then Erica France, competed in the 2012 Miss USA pageant as Miss Arizona. Started working for Donald Trump, and then immediately after that went to Romania and posted this following video on her Vimeo page 12 years ago.
I believe that we all have angels in our lives, and these are my little angels from Antonio Placement Center in Constanța, Romania.
The person and the organization that she thanks at the end of that video, Colonel Busher and Associa United Hands Romania, have proven ties to child trafficking at multiple different points of their time in Romania. According to ctnews.ro, Associa United Hands Romania had close ties with the U.S. military at the Black Sea Rotational Force 17.1 and at the Mihal Kogalsanu military base. Now, forgive me for these pronunciations. I don't speak Romanian. In this article from January of 2020 from activenews.ro, I translated it, so let me just read it to you. It says, a former translator from the American base in Kogalsanu accuses a real brothel operated here where minors were brought in. The woman filed a criminal complaint with DICOT, D-I-I-C-O-T, requesting that the Kogalsanu file be connected to the Carousel Develsalu file. DICOT is the branch of the Romanian government that investigates organized crime.
Now, whistleblowers from inside Charlie's inner circle are coming forward, terrified, hiding, and speaking only through encrypted channels. They're backing up what we already know and revealing even more about the kind of information people are being killed for.
You know, I don't even know where to start. I watched him fall apart in those last few months. Not because he was crazy, because he was seeing too much. He was uncovering things that nobody in his position was ever supposed to touch. He used to tell me his wife was the best thing that ever happened to him. They met when he interviewed her for a media job. She was perfect, bright, charming, magnetic. He thought he'd found his soulmate, but he didn't know about her past. That was the chapter she buried deep, and when it surfaced, it shattered him. I remember the night he called me, voice shaking. He said it straight out. I think she's part of it. I said, part of what? He said, the network. The same one I've been chasing. The same one tied into the wars, the border, the trafficking, all of it. He wanted to believe she could somehow love him and still be his handler. That's what he said. I still have the text. He was trying to make sense of the impossible. I told him he was too good a person, saw the good in people even when it wasn't there. But he wouldn't let it go. He kept digging. That's when he started talking about the Epstein files.
Man. Damn. Oh, I kind of feel bad for him now. Sheesh. I kind of feel bad for him. I don't know what to say, man. This is some nasty work. He's trapped. He found out Israel's dirty. And now he found out his wife was involved in some human trafficking, child human trafficking. And she could be down with Netanyahu. So he was cornered.
He said those documents were the missing link, the proof that what he'd found wasn't isolated, that the trafficking, the blackmail, the political control, it all tied together. He was a Trump supporter, sure. He kept saying, if Trump really stands for America, he needs to release the files, all of them. No redactions. The world needs the truth. He believed those files connected the dots, the border chaos, the international networks, the politicians on every side who were either compromised or complicit. He said once that if people saw what was in there, the world's power structure would collapse overnight. The last time we spoke, he sounded exhausted but calm, like a man who'd already made peace with what was coming. He told me he had everything backed up, and that if anything happened to him, I'd know where to look. We never got that far. A few days later, he was gone. I can't tell you exactly what he found, but I know this. He wasn't paranoid. He was right, and his death proves it.
For America, Kirk's close ties to a man credibly accused in the Romanian press. There's quite a seat on the board of a company funneling TPUSA use. The pattern is becoming impossible to ignore. A new threat has emerged. The elites are no longer content with influencing elections or shaping narratives. They're waging war on humanity itself through the weaponization of information and data.
With the click of a button, you can bring down nations to their knees very rapidly if you so desire. And if you're willing to, because every system can be hacked. Our airplanes, our hospitals, our cars, our banks. Actually, the most important word here is our data banks. They can be hacked.
Israel isn't only blackmailing Congress, controlling the feds, and paying US influencers to astroturf. They've seized global control of VPNs, the very tools people trust to hide them. most private activities. And the most chilling part, most people don't realize the danger they're in. When Netanyahu talks about data banks, he wasn't talking about spreadsheets or savings accounts. He was talking about VPNs, the reservoir of the world's secrets.
And that's what it is, man. This is... wow. Kind of feel bad for him, though. Kind of do. Even though, you know, you went in dirty. Anyway, we'll talk about Trump getting disrespected by Benjamin Netanyahu now. Okay.
All right, Trump is in Israel with Benjamin Netanyahu, both, I believe, far-right, war hawk fascists, and it's just as nauseating as you would think. But before we show some footage from that, I want to show you Witkoff. Steve Witkoff is Trump's foreign policy expert that is so over his skis on foreign policy, it's insane. Here he is just a couple of days ago in Tel Aviv with Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, and listen to the crowd when he mentions Benjamin Netanyahu. These are Israelis. Listen to this.
To Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay. To Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Okay, you get the idea. This goes on and on and on. And number one, let's just talk about the fact that he is so rattled there. They have so misread this entire thing, how unpopular Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu are worldwide. It's nauseating. So today, just this morning, you guys, Trump is over at the Israeli parliament. Netanyahu rambles on for an hour straight. It is so humiliating. It would make the cabinet members, where they talk about how great Trump is, it's just like that. And before I play this clip of Netanyahu, I want to remind you that Israel's big argument is we're the only democracy in the Middle East, and Hamas doesn't support gay rights, and other Arab countries don't support gay rights. I want to remind you right now, MAGA doesn't support gay rights. Right. I want to remind you right now that MAGA has taken away a woman's right to choose.
Well, MAGA is one of those undercover DL type of people. They'll say all this, but they still have homosexual activities behind closed doors. They'll still be meeting up on Grindr. They'll still be trying to creep with these liberal women, Democrat women, even though they got a whole wife, a whole relationship on the side. They're a bunch of hypocrites, man. That's what I got to say. They're just a bunch of hypocrites. They don't really believe this stuff. It's about power and control. They don't really believe in Christian family values. They just want the right to control women and attack marginalized groups.
I want to remind you that MAGA is deteriorating democracy. So these narratives are such bullshit, and they're finally exposed. But here's Benjamin Netanyahu, just a brief clip of the nauseating ass kissing to Donald Trump.
Thank you for supporting Operation Rising Lion and for your bold decision to launch Operation Midnight Hammer. Boy, is that... You got to hear this. This is the most fitting name ever named for a military operation, because a little after midnight, you really hammered them.
Yeah, he fails to mention they goaded him into it. It's just absolutely pathetic how easy it is to flatter and manipulate our beta male, dementia-ridden president. And I want to point out that J.B. Pritzker has been pointing out the following narrative. The people in Trump's cabinet are exploiting his dementia to erode civil rights. And I think world leaders right now, Benjamin Netanyahu is exploiting Trump's dementia right there, because he's clearly thinking he won't remember that Netanyahu and Israel are the ones that dog walked him right into that thing.
Well, of course he won't, because he can't remember anything. And Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal. Let's just remember that.
Well, the thing is like Benjamin Netanyahu got that Epstein files on him. So Trump really can't do anything. Most of these world leaders, they cannot do anything. They have the Epstein files on Trump. All right. There's so much dirt that Trump has. Katie Johnson, that letter that he had that's formed as a woman, as a naked woman, talking about their secret, their secret, him and Jeffrey Epstein's secret. The fact that Trump had like human trafficking going on in the Trump Towers. Okay. Trump has slaves in Dubai. I don't know if anybody knows that, but he literally has slaves in Dubai. You can look it up. He's also involved in blood diamonds. Trump is a really corrupt man. Okay. Trump is not a good person at all. He's clearly not. I'm going to talk about the ceasefire that Netanyahu violated. Sorry. What's going on here?
Israel is saying that because this was posted by Sean King earlier today. Israel is saying that because Hamas can't find the dead bodies of hostages buried beneath the rubble they caused, they will not honor the ceasefire deal. Tens of thousands of bodies are buried beneath the rubble. Israel knows this. They caused it on purpose. And they won't allow fuel or bulldozers in to help locate the bodies. It's a disgusting trap. He goes on to say, we are 72 hours into a truce, and yet airstrikes have continued. Families are still dying, and the gate that decides whether infants eat tonight, Rafah, remains locked. Israeli officials now say aid will stay restricted until the remains are returned. It's theater. They know the bodies lie under concrete the bombs laid down. They know recovery requires machinery. They know they've banned it. That's not compliance. That's entrapment. He goes on to describe in his words the chain of causation. Let's go through it together. First, Israel leveled whole districts, burying people beneath collapsed apartment towers, schools, and mosques, including their own hostages. Then it blocked the very equipment needed to lift slabs and clear streets. Fuel, cranes, bulldozers, rescue tools. Now it declares the ceasefire violated because the remains haven't been retrieved fast enough. And it shouldn't be any surprise who have been following this for about 2 years now, that this really isn't out of character. And them only talking about security measures, those of us, again, who have been following this know that what that really means is what he has outlined below. The objection of aid is going in. His answer, a trickle is not compliance. The benchmark is the promised scale. Rafah open in both directions, fuel restored, heavy equipment cleared, and malnutrition indicators falling. A mother in Rafah doesn't measure progress by podiums in Washington. She measures it in clean water, fuel for generators, formula only can walk. A can of formula is not charity, it's medicine. A working excavator is not a concession, it's the only honest way to keep the promise everyone claims to want kept. And for those who ask where faith lives in this, whoever saves one life, it is as if he has saved all of mankind. Saving lives means opening borders, letting aid through, and allowing the equipment that unearths the dead so families can bury them with dignity and the living can begin again. He says, call this what it is. Israel is saying the quiet part out loud. We will keep Gaza starved and sealed until Palestinians deliver what we buried and refuse to let them unearth. That's not implementation. It's a disgusting trap, and the world knows it. I said this in a post just yesterday. What's happening? This is a breadcrumb. And not just by Donald Trump, but by several individuals who, over the last 2 years, were complicit in or directly responsible for the slaughter of innocent human beings. Megalomaniac, malignant narcissists who now are sitting at a table together saying, I'm a peacemaker. I'm a peacemaker now, right? Now that they've starved, now that many of them have irreversible issues because of malnutrition, now that babies have died in incubators and in utero, now that school...
That's what they want you to think. But the reality is everybody's woken up and we see them for the callous monsters that they are. Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. And people are not going to let this slide. They're not going to let this slide. Benjamin Netanyahu has to be thrown in prison, and so does Trump. This is wrong. This is inhumane. And they got to pay for it. They have to pay for it. This is evil. And justice must happen. Justice has to happen. They have to be held accountable. But unfortunately, in this life, I don't see it as possible. I just don't see it. All right? I just don't see it happening at this time. Other than that, talk to you guys later.